Sorry, we just came on the air, you just said you like to throw yourself around the ring on the weekend because of the job you do through the week.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that.
Why? I don't know why.
I don't know. Passions, I guess, is the valid excuse for it. A bit of a mentalist would probably be the other one, but no, it's just the art, isn't it? I suppose.
It is. This is, of course, talk to. Is it please correct me if I get your name wrong. Adonis Payne.
That is the one.
There you
Perfect.
go. We've got lots of stuff to talk about, but as always, intern, roll the intro. So we're on Thursday. How's the week been, my friend? All right?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you, mate. Was down crewing at Riot Cabaret on Tuesday, so a bit of a broken up week, really, because I didn't get until 2:30 on Wednesday morning from doing that job. So knackered yesterday. So it kind of feels a bit like a blur this week, but overall quite good. I got an extra day off me normal job. So feeding into the weekend a little bit quicker.
Awesome. So I've often wondered this. How do you manage to juggle work and wrestling? Is that kind of like really hard to do?
I'm very blessed in what I do for work that I'm permanently remote from home, working at my desk from home. I get flexi hours as well. Like, I wasn't fully certain on doing the crewing job at Riot Cabaret. I only asked them last week if I could have the day off, and straight away, yep, cool. So if if I ran out of leave, annual leave, for example, and I wanted an extra day off, I can work the above hours throughout the Monday to Thursday to get the Friday off, that kind of shtick. And my hours aren't too taxing either. I can finish by about 4:30 normally if I'm lucky and it's not too busy. So I'm really blessed with what I do. I know it's different for other people. Probably a lot more people have more of a headache than me with it, but I'm fortunate I get the weekends off and can juggle it really easily.
Awesome. So yeah, obviously we're talking about obviously your career in wrestling and stuff. You mentioned Riot Cabaret there, and I've seen a lot of their stuff. And for people obviously who's not familiar with it, give them a little insight because I've seen a lot of their content online. It's absolutely terrific.
I think in short, the best way to describe it is batshit. And I know James and Sean who own it and run it, will agree with me there. They're both great people. They contacted Square One, which is where I train, to do the ring for them. So I just go down with Hugo Bloom, who runs that academy, and help him out, do the ring crew with a bunch of it. But the shows there are just fantastic. I mean, number one, you get some of the best talent across the whole of the scene there. But it's just that perfect mix of top tier, unbelievable wrestling to just stupid and ridiculous. Like Mr. Blobby did a tag team match last year. How? I don't know. I still don't know. I watched it from ringside with my own eyes. I still don't know how it happened. Pretty sure he pinned Tate Mayfair's. That's something that he's got on his CV now. But they always do some ludicrous things. Like they'll just randomly have like cosplay rumbles and battle royals, all the good stuff that you have at like a feel good wrestling show. But one of their main events a few weeks ago, a couple shows ago, was Robbie X, Michael Oku, and Leon Slater. So you've got the two sides of the coin, but it's a great atmosphere. It's in a great venue. I think getting to the venue is, for us, it's not too bad because we drive there in the daytime. I don't know what it's like for the punters trying to fight through Clapham, but it's just a really good night out. Really, really good night out.
Yeah, the first thing I actually saw from Riot Cabaret was Session versus Charles Crawley in a singing competition, and then they start fighting after. I'm like, what the hell is this? But do you know what? By the time I watched it, I thought, this is just awesome.
And like every great Disney movie, they're now a tag team and hold the tag team championship. So it went from being a Disney sing-off to just running this storyline ongoing, and it's brilliant. They're both brilliant as well.
Absolutely. So obviously I want to focus on obviously your career now. You talk about obviously getting into wrestling and stuff like that, and obviously what made you obviously pursue that career.
It was one of those. Wrestling has always been a part of my life growing up. Loved it as a kid, growing up through I would say the ruthless aggression era was fantastic. And then I'd always kept that love. People, a lot of the time when you get older, I was one of them. You almost try and hide it, like it's that sort of dirty secret. You don't want people to know you still like wrestling, because it's not popular. But I always just had that love, and I was never really sort of shy of it. And I was playing football, didn't really think about a career in wrestling, didn't know much about the UK independent circuit, anything like that. It was always sort of just WWE on the telly. And I did a bit of research, I want to say 2018, 2017, 18, into doing it. Never actually started training, just kind of went, oh, that's an idea, pushed to the side as you do with most things in life. And then one of my old best friends just went, why don't you do it? What's holding you back? You're not playing football anymore. You got nothing stopping you. Give it a go. Because we were both just super fans. Like, we'd be going round to his house playing the PlayStation, all the WWE games, keeping up to date with it. So he just pushed me down the line, gave me that kick up the arse I needed, and here we are now. I think I started training in April 2019, and it was a slow start, and then did it more full time towards the back end, and then the pandemic hit. So really only just started a career just after COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And what wrestling school, obviously, that you went to? Because I'm familiar with a couple of them, but not them all.
So that was UBW Square One Academy, which is based in Hitchin. It was in Henlow when I first started, but we moved over to Hitchin just throughout COVID and afterwards. They've got their own unit, gym set up in there. So you've now got two sides to the coin. The guy who owns it set up multiple businesses, and it's now just running as its own entity, as a gym and a wrestling academy hybrid. He's big on strongman as well, which same as my tag partner Artemis. So they do strongman training down there with big Atlas stones. I stay away from that because that scares me. But yeah, it's a really good facility. I've enjoyed my time there. It's where Charles Crowley initially broke through. So Stevie Turner as well. So all that sort of, it's got a little bit of background and history to it.
Awesome, awesome. And what was it like taking your first bump? I've never asked to wrestle this, and I've just fought it on the spot.
For me, I quite enjoyed it, but only because it didn't sting as much as I thought. You know, a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's the shock that goes through you, this, that, the other." I used to play in goal and do a lot of goalkeeping, so I was quite used to throwing myself on the floor anyway. So if anything, it was quite nice to have that spring in it instead of the hard floor of just dirt in a field. But I did my first one technically on a crash mat, but my first bump on a ring didn't actually seem too bad. But it was then the multitude of them that came afterwards, which are now adding up and sort of the stupid stuff. But it wasn't as much of a shock to the system as I thought. It didn't do enough to put me off.
Awesome, awesome. And you mentioned obviously Artemis there, and that's obviously my next question. Talk about obviously the origins of the Odyssey, because I love that name, by the way.
That the origin story is funny because it just came off a conversation before Artemis made her debut. I think it was the December of 2021. Just after COVID. She was just about to have her Academy show debut. I was doing a gauntlet match to become the number one contender for the Academy title that I'd go on and win. And we were out the back, and I'm panicking about my 5-minute spot. And Artemis, as brilliant as she is just so chilled out before our first match. And we're just chatting, getting changed, warming up. And she goes, "Oh, Artemis, Adonis, we should do something here. There's something here." And that conversation goes on the back burner for a few months. And then all of a sudden we're roped into a stable with memes called the Meme Team. And then we just stood there going, well, we may as well do a tag team where, like, instead of being two lackeys, why don't we just do a tag team? And then we tried thinking about a name. I was playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey at the time, and I went, well, the Odyssey would work. That's kind of Greek, isn't it?
Good game.
And then we were formed from that, and we weren't sure if it was going to work. And then we did our first tag match in the July, and it went really well. And we were happy with it. And the dynamic of her doing her shoot gym work as a strong woman and me just being a nutcase and throwing myself around, we just meshed the two together where she would just throw me around instead. And it worked. It started getting over. People liked us, and we went from being a heel team to a babyface team very quickly because of that dynamic. And we were just happy. And she's now one of my best friends that, I talk to her nearly every day just about random stuff, not even to do with wrestling a lot of the time. It's just all good fun.
Which do you prefer, face or heel?
Do you know what? When I started, I only ever wanted to be a heel, and I would not listen to anybody that was like, "Oh, you could do face work." But I think now at 90% of promotions, I'm a baby face, and that's probably because I prefer doing it. I think I don't know whether it's a bit of egos kicked in, and I like the cheering and selling merch, or what it is, but I think I prefer babyface work just because I'm more fine tuned to it. But I think if I was still working more dominantly heel, I'd say that because it's where my comfort zone is more than anything. But I'd go babyface for now.
Okay. So the other company I saw you work for, is it Ignite Wrestling? Is that correct?
Yeah, Ignite. That
Talk
kind of
about
came up. Hey, sorry?
Sorry. Talk about obviously working for them.
Yeah, that was a surreal one because I made so Ignite came on the scene. It's CJ Carter who runs it. He was somebody I faced in my first match back after the pandemic when I was very, very new. And I always wanted to work for him. So he'd set up this company. He did a breakout tournament throughout my first year. I missed that. I wasn't ready. And in the second year, all of my friends were getting booked on these shows. And I was like, just want to be booked for you. Just want to work for you. What am I doing wrong? And he said to me, he was like, the second you get custom gear, because at the time I didn't have it for financial issues, he was like, I'll put you on a show because you're good enough. And I thought it could have been one of those ones where it was like, I don't know if he likes me or not, but whatever. Posted a picture in custom gear. Within 5 minutes, I had a message from him with a couple of dates. I didn't realize that by the end of those 2 dates he'd gave me, I'd be his main champion, but that happened out of nowhere. He put me in his breakout division. The winner of that breakout division won an anytime shot at a belt, and he made me cash it in on the same night, which was last November. So it was my first main championship at a company, the first time where you sort of considered the focal point. And it was a real humbling moment because I'd gone from probably like 6 to 8 months prior going, I don't know if he likes me or not, to all of a sudden having like the biggest form of praise you could put on somebody that works for you. And it's just, Ignite's been surreal. It's easily, do you know what? I would say it's my favorite promotion to work for just because of the standard. I mean, I've got a lot of companies that I love dearly, but Ignite, just the way that I've been treated there from CJ, the matches that he puts on across the card. I think he did a card in February, which any of the 6 matches could have been the main event. And then I've looked at CJ when I've turned up to the venue and gone, please, am I sixth? Am I going on last? He's like, yeah, you're the main champion. You're main eventing. And I went, how am I meant to follow the 5 that you've put before us? And I think it was CPF were facing the Rebellion. I could be wrong on that. No, it wasn't. It was Maverick Mayhew against Taylor James. CPF against the Bryants. That might have been the one just gone. I could be getting those mixed up. But just the Corey McRae, Luna, and Tommy Kyle in a triple threat. It was just these array of names that were just dropping and coming through. And I'm like, okay, now I've got to step up a little bit. And I faced Jay Joshua. We did really well. Really good match. And then this next show, he's lumping me in there with Tommy Kyle, Darice, and Gene Money. And I'm like, okay, now I'm amongst the big boys.
Would you consider like the big boys in a sense?
There's so many. And I've been very blessed that in my sort of short 2 to 3 year career that I've managed to work with so many big names. Like I've worked with Charles Crowley on 2 different occasions, 3 even, tell a lie. Lana Austin, Rob Drake, Alexis Falcon, Bullet, Tate Mayfairs. Even sort of looking out towards the Welsh scene, I got blessed to work with Jay Joshua. And they may not be sort of big across the UK, but to me, these are people that when I came into the scene, I was watching when I was brand new. So I would say everybody who had sort of been running the scene before I'd sort of turned up to me as a big boy, because I'm like, well, I used to watch you before I was even on shows. So, but I don't know if that's just a sort of humble way of looking at it. I think your obvious ones are Leon Slater. I think Darice has to be up there for what he's done in the past few years. Charles Crowley for what he's doing across the scene. Michael Oku is probably number one in my opinion.
So sorry, you just mentioned Lana Ross in there. How did you deal with Lana? Because I mean, it's an experience. Let's be honest, pun intended.
That one was wild because I think this was at United Wrestling. We had a triple threat tag team match. So it was Lana and Rob, Alexis Falcon and Charles Crowley, and then me and Artemis just in a triple threat tornado tag team schmoz fest for the belts. And it was a really good experience. I mean, I felt forearms full force and they're not pleasant. That's something you'll feel the next day. But overall, I don't think I had too much dealings with her other than a drop kick and a few forearms. I managed to escape it and get out the firing line. I think it was more Artemis that had to take that heat.
Dude, that's brilliant. So you mentioned Bullet there. Now, if I remember rightly, that was at a title show in London, if I remember correctly.
It was, yeah, it was. It was a long time coming, that one. I also worked against him for United in a triple threat match, but didn't quite get the full Bullet experience. Let's put it that way.
And what's it like, obviously? Sorry. So what's it like, obviously, facing people like I'm going to say powerhouses. That's probably the best way to put it.
For me, and this is just me, I prefer it because the story's written there before you even step foot in the ring. It's especially if we're doing it the way that we did, where I was considered the baby face, so that was overcoming the odds kind of thing. I feel a lot more relaxed going into that situation. For the one with Bullet, I was more nervous than usual because I built so much on myself to perform in that match. And I look up to Bullet a lot. He's helped me out massively, so I wanted to give him a really good match. But for me, I enjoy that dynamic. I don't know if it's because, like I said, I'm a bit of a mentalist and I like bumping and I like doing stupid bumps. So I was thinking of all the fun ideas where he could just pluck me out of the sky and chuck me around a bit. But I don't know. I just enjoy it. I prefer that sort of dynamic than anything else. I think it's the classic tale, isn't it? The underdog and the big brute, the David versus Goliath story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was looking through your Twitter and stuff, and I want to see how you come up with this ring gear, because I thought this was absolutely spot on. How did you come up with this ring gear? Because this is absolutely awesome, by the way.
Thank you. So I wanted to have the whole Spartan armor from the second I got the name. Well, actually, that's a lie. Initially, I called myself Adonis because I was tremendously underweight, and I was a heel. So I was like, oh, that'd be ironically funny. And then I realized to stay in this game and to actually make a sort of go of it, you kind of have to be in some form of shape, or at least a fighting shape, which I wasn't, unless you have the sort of style that goes with it. And my wrestling style wasn't that. It wasn't the sort of where I could be that small. So I started packing on a little bit of weight, and then I was like, right, now I've got a name that I need to kind of reference along the way. I can't just be an English lad from near Milton Keynes and call myself Adonis. What's the reasoning behind it? So I delved a bit more into the Spartan side and the Trojan side of things. So I was having a hunt for armor. I found a load of armor a long time ago that just did, which is the stuff that you see there, the chest plate. But it just didn't work very well. It was cutting me up and scratching me. And then one of my good wrestling friends' dads, Josh Spicer, his dad works with surfboards and like creating surfboard bags. And he was like, I could probably fix that for you and put some like padding on the inside and make it quick release so you can use it again. And he did, and he nailed it. And he probably should start making wrestling gear. And I'm going to plug that on here for him because hopefully it will convince him to do it. And then I was like, right, now I need a mask because I had a standard Trojan Spartan helmet, but I wanted to stand out a bit more where it's not just, okay, he's a soldier, he's Adonis, that's it. And I just won the Ignite Championship, and I was like, let's go down a king route with it. Let's call myself the Legion King. Let's get a mask that can kind of turn into a crown, or like a crown with maybe even just a crown. And I didn't find him. I harassed Spike Trevay until he gave me where he got his mask made. And he told me it was this guy in Cambridge called the Face Forge. So Spike Trivet is the origin sort of behind where that mask came from. I got in touch and pitched him this idea for a Spartan Trojan style MF Doom mask with a crown on it. And he generated an AI image, which was perfect to what I wanted. And he got it 3D printed and all made up. And within about 4 weeks, I had it. And I was just, and then all of a sudden it was complete. And I've only ever done that side of the gimmick at Ignite. So I'd like to break it out a bit more, but it's almost, I'm not going to call it my Demon Balor because it's not at all. My wrestling style and the persona underneath is exactly the same. I just felt it had some leverage behind it coming out as the champion of a company wearing all that rig. And it's a lot of kit to carry around. So if I'm in a full car with like 5 people, it's not going to fit in the boot because we've got all their gear. So I need to figure out some way that I can get it around a little bit more.
Maybe roof rack?
It might have to be, but I've only got a little Toyota Yaris, so I'm not sure how that's going to help.
That was just a suggestion. That was the first thing I thought. Sorry.
It's not a bad shout. I've never actually given it thought, but I just don't think it will go on my car in the practical side of it.
Yeah. So for obviously people who's not familiar obviously with your work, so this is kind of like your chance to say, why should people go check out Adonis Payne?
I'd like to think that I'm fairly good at what I do. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but you know, I've put on some good matches that other people have said that they've thoroughly enjoyed. I'm involved in a great tag team with a phenomenal wrestler in Artemis who we just have a hell of a lot of fun. And I think the fun that we have translates into our work. We had a match recently against Sunshine Machine where I was just a nervous wreck before we went out the curtain, but afterwards was just having a blast. And all of my work that I did at Sacrifice, where I'd lost the rights to my surname and was dressing up as other wrestlers, was just a complete laugh. So I just like to have fun, and hopefully that translates through to what I do. But then again, at the same time, I like to put my passion behind it and show a bit of grit and a bit of fight. I don't know. I find it hard to sort of plug myself and why people should watch me. It's kind of one of those ones where it's like, I hope I'm doing very good, but I don't know for certain. I just think wrestling is very subjective, and you might like me and you might not, but you're only going to know by watching me and watching my stuff.
There you go. There you go. So I'm just trying to think now, because I mean, there's so much obviously we could talk about and stuff like that. Like I said, you've done so much. You've obviously mentioned Derish. You've obviously mentioned other people. Is there any people you like to work with, obviously, in the UK scene?
Number one is always going to be Michael Oku for me at the minute. I've recently spoke to him a lot more on a personal level, in him being around sort of where I train and running seminars and then being on similar shows to him. I have a long bucket list, and I always used to be Sunshine Machine was a key answer, and I've fortunately managed to tick that off. I'm going to say Michael Oku at number one for me. Vusic's up there in a singles match. I managed to work with him a little bit at Tidal in this Iron Will tournament final, and I'd love to have a full, proper fight with him, proper match. And I've never worked one-on-one with Alexis Falcon, and that would probably be one on my list because I've seen her do some incredible things. She had a great match with a guy called Simon Quest at United not too long ago, and it completely just broke the sort of intergender style barriers of that you'd normally get the questions of, oh, that can't happen. Because Simon Quest is 6'6". They had Memes in that match as well. It was a triple threat. And Memes is also 6'4", 6'5", may even be taller than that. And Alex kicked the shit out of both of them, and it was great. And she was fantastic throughout all of it. And that would be a singles match I'd like to have.
Awesome. And you mentioned obviously intergender wrestling there. Now, I spoke to Adam Bolt about this, and I want to get your thoughts on this because I know some people are not a fan of it, some people aren't. I obviously love it myself because I feel like it should be, spot on. But what do you obviously think with it?
So, I mean, I'll probably have a biased view more than anybody, given the tag team I'm in. But my answer to this question is always the same. Artemis is a strong woman with I think it's karate background. I might be wrong. I might have got the complete wrong end of the stick here. She can power lift double my body weight. She can easily lift me on her shoulders when we do wrestling moves, and she hits hard. And if we got into a proper fight, I would put money on Artemis beating me up 9 times out of 10. So why can that not translate to wrestling? You know, if it's done right, it's brilliant. Like, even just going back to Tuesday, the recent Riot Cabaret show that they ran, you had Charles Crowley and Session Moth in a tag team against Bullet and Mulligan. And Bullet and Mulligan are both massive brutes of men, and they made it work in a way that it was entertaining, enjoyable, and there was none of the sort of ooh or kind of moments that a lot of people argue with intergender wrestling. And I don't see the argument behind it. I don't understand it. I've never understood why it was a debate to begin with, but I think that's just different people's thoughts and feelings. And like I said earlier, wrestling's very subjective, so everybody's got a right to have a different opinion on things. And I'm not here going to tell them, oh, you can't dislike intergender wrestling. That's not my place to say it, but yeah, my opinion is I think it's great. I think if it's done really well, it's incredible. And yeah, a lot of women in this country could probably beat me up in a shoot fight. So why can't they in a wrestling ring?
And like you said, I think Alexis obviously is a prime example. Obviously, I've seen her in matches, obviously with male, and she holds her own just as much as obviously as the men do. And this is what it winds me up more so when people say, "Oh, women should be fake women." No, do you know what I mean? It's 2024. Things have changed. Times have changed. So I absolutely love the answer you've just gave there. By the way,
I think I was even having that topic of discussion at the United show I was talking about with the triple threat tag match with Alexis at one point. And she even said to me the argument of a shoot fight. Like, if it was a shoot fight, then I'd definitely get some hits in and it'd be an equal fight. And I was like, listen, I don't doubt you, but please let's hope that never happens because I'm scared. So, yeah, I just don't see the point in the argument with it. I think there's some wrestling fans out there as well where there's no reasoning with them and there's no point arguing with them. You're better off going, that's your opinion. Thank you. I'll have mine.
There you go. And I think I know this next answer to this question. I ask a lot of people is, are you your own worst critic when you're obviously wrestling?
Yeah, I would say so. I think I'm always hard on myself for the little things, like like minor details that nobody in an audience would know have gone wrong. And it could be as simple as, oh, I went to grab his arm rather than just ducking under his move. And I'm there like, why am I even worried about that? Does it matter that I've stopped his clothesline by grabbing him instead of ducking underneath it? No, it's still got me to the same end result of where I wanted to be, but I'll kick myself over it for weeks. And it was even, I had a key one in the match with Bullet for title where I'd got a little bit lost right at the very start, kicked myself throughout the rest of the match, and then straight away when I'm talking to him at the back, he's gone, you are like 2-3 years in. He was like, you've only just gone over 100 matches. He was like, these are mistakes that you will still make. He went, you're not going to be the perfect wrestler now. He said, some people that are the perfect wrestler have wrestled over 1,000 matches. So when you get there and you're still making mistakes, and he went, even people at the top of the game make mistakes. It happens. Like, stop worrying about it. And I'm there just trying to apologize profusely to him. And I think that opened my eyes a little bit more to kind of be like, well, let's just see how it looks first before I start worrying.
I'll kind of like that answer as well, because the way I see it is it's like it's a learning experience, regardless whether it's wrestling, working, anything. It's always learning.
Yeah, exactly that. Like I said, that's one of the main examples of how he's helped me out already, and in the small part that he's had to play in my career. But that was a sort of really helpful one where I kind of just toned it down a bit. And from that sort of, I think that was February, that match. I think from there onwards, I've been a lot more chilled out with my work this year. Whereas I used to be sort of, everything's got to be perfect. Otherwise, I'm not going to get noticed by these people or seen by these people or booked at this place. And wrestling doesn't work like that anyway. I could be perfect in every single match I have at my local promotions. Doesn't mean I'm going to be on the next Riot Cabarets or Rev Pros or Progresses, whatever your big name company is, insert it there.
Yep, there you go. So being a wrestler like yourself, do you get a chance to watch wrestling from like a fan's point of view?
I would say it's difficult now. I was having this conversation with my brother who's in the business over sort of WrestleMania weekend, and you're constantly picking up on spots and going, oh, that was a really cool spot. That idea was really cool. That move was done really well. How would you do that? That you almost lose that sort of fan enjoyment of just sitting there and going, oh, he's just kicking the hell out of him. But I think that's the one beauty of wrestling as well, is that it takes one brilliant match and you're straight back into that place. And you're like, oh, where's this going next? The Danielson Ospreay match not too long ago. I'd even put the Michael Oku Will Ospreay match from Rev Pro in there. The WrestleMania main events, pick either night. They could both go in there, where you just fall back out of that sort of working mindset and just sit there as a fan and go, this is just thoroughly entertaining and I'm here for whatever happens next. But I watch as much wrestling as I possibly can. A lot of the time it might be highlights, but I won't miss pay-per-views. I'll go back and watch them just to keep up to date. But sort of your weekly running TV shows, I'll just probably watch over highlights or on a catch-up when I'm supposed to be working.
AEW or WWE?
I like both, but for different reasons. I'm going to say WWE simply because I grew up on it. So I know more of the background and history. When AEW first became a thing, I wasn't on the independent scene or had seen a lot of these independent workers. So unless they were previous WWE, didn't have much sort of to know about them. In terms of watching the product as it's going on weekly, I'll watch both. But I think just from childhood bias, I'm more WWE than AEW.
What's some of the talent you liked in WWE when you were younger?
My two main idols growing up were always, I had actually three. Edge, Eddie Guerrero, and Randy Orton were the three that I'd sort of really got to. Obviously, you've got your mega over baby faces in John Cena and Batista and Rey Mysterio that were floating around. But I always like the bad guys. That's why I only ever saw myself as a bad guy coming into it. So I wanted to be like Edge growing up. I'd say he was number one.
Edge is absolutely terrific. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Edge and Christian back in the day as well. That's probably one of my favorite tag teams. So a few little more questions will begin to wind down. I'm just curious for this one. Before you go obviously out into performance stuff, do you get yourself like into a zona thing, or do you have like a ritual of some sort?
I try. I get a stretching routine at some point, and a lot of the time when I'm stretching, I'll be going over what I need to. But I try now not to get myself too worked up. So a lot of the time I'm just distracting myself with random conversations with other people in the back. But when I'm sort of stood behind the curtain, I'll always wet my hair, stick a bit of oil on myself and in my hair, and just sort of try and pump myself up as much as possible, get that energy up a little bit so I can really burst through. I don't like to go out there, go through a curtain, like just stroll out slowly. So that to me is a struggle when I do the new gimmick at Ignite, because I kind of have to do that. But in terms of routine, it varies. I'll always get my gear on early doors, most of the time before wrestling fans are even in the venue, just because I like to have it done and out of the way. I don't want to be that guy where you can hear your music playing and go, Adonis, you got to go out. And I'm like, not got my boots on. So whether I take that to the extreme by being ready 2 hours in advance is fine by me, as long as I'm not going to be that guy.
I've just got the image of you running around saying, where are my shoes?
Yeah, exactly. I just can't do it. I think there was a match at Ignite not long ago where I can't remember who it was. But they were sat there just not in gear yet, and they were the next match up, and I'm like losing my head. And they're fine, they're fully under control in what they're doing, and they're fully ready. But I'm there just losing my mind, going, I could never do that. Just in case, knockout or injury, and the match is cut short, and you're like, "Well, you're on now." I just couldn't. It could never be me.
Many injuries since you've obviously been wrestling? Any major ones, minor ones?
I've been fortunate. I've never had to take time off, other than one slight MCL issue that I had, which forced me out of a weekend date with UKPW, unfortunately. That was last November. But I've been blessed, and touch wood, hopefully I'll continue to be blessed, that I've not had any major injuries that have stopped me working. I think I might have broken metatarsal in my foot back end of last year, but it wasn't enough of a pain that I'd stopped working on it. And I didn't really realize until it was kind of half healed itself. Because I was like, bit weird. My foot still hurts after like 3 months when I'm bending it backwards. And they were like, that's probably your metatarsal that went. And I'm like, oh, well, it's done now, isn't it? But no, a few cuts to the head, a few sore wrists, sore knees, potentially broken foot, rolled ankles, all that sort of usual wear and tear you could get at a normal sort of rate of life, but nothing severe as of yet.
Awesome. So one final question. What's the goals for the rest of the year, short term and long term?
Oh, good question. I think the short-term goal is to just keep remembering where I'm at with my career, and that's I'm here to enjoy myself. I picked this up as a hobby, so as much as I want to achieve the bigger things and, you know, get the bigger pay rises and work the bigger shows, just to enjoy everything I'm doing regardless of what happens next. And yeah, to just look after everybody that I'm working with, mainly because I don't want to be that guy either that hurts people. But longer term, I want to be on a Riot Cabaret show. I want to break through the door of your ICWs, your TNTs, your Progress, Rev Pros, get on their radar. And I want to have a match with Michael Oku. That's probably the longer term ones.
I want to see you versus Spike Gervais, since you mentioned him earlier on.
Yeah. That's actually another one that I'd probably. Do you know what? Now I regret not putting him in my top 3 earlier, because that's another one. I think just for the company, the Face Forge, that would be brilliant for them, just in terms of marketing. Just have 2 of us nose to nose in the masks.
That'd be brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This has been an absolute fun chat, Adonis. One final thing, my friend. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
You can follow me on socials. I think it's at Adonis_Payne or at Adonis Payne PW, depending on which one. I can't remember which is which. So whether which one's on X, which one's on Instagram. And I've got a new t-shirt coming out made by good guys at Fast Count Clothing. They've just done me a top new design. I'm currently taking pre-orders. We'll probably get the actual order put in by the end of this week. So pending as to when this goes out, you can get in touch and order one direct.
This goes out Saturday at 6:30, so maybe a bit late.
Potentially, I might hold off just in case, but by the Monday, if you're listening to this and it's past Monday the 6th, I think it would be, then too late.
This has been an absolute fun chat. Of course, the Magic of Wrestling is back next weekend as we're looking at wrestling figures in wrestling. So like wrestling authorities. So when you think of wrestling authorities throughout wrestling, which one sticks out for you?
I think the most obvious one to me is The Authority, just because of the name. That's probably such a bland answer, but that to me was something that brought my attention back to watching weekly TV around that sort of 2013-14 point. So
the funny thing is that's the first one on the list, so well played. Adonis, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, my friend.
Not a problem, mate. Thank you for having me on.
Cheers, guys.